Good afternoon to all. My name is reimagine. I'm the founder and president of the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association and also the co-founder of the Brain Capital Alliance and the Brain Economy Hub. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this COP30 side event on bridging brain capital and nature capital, pathways for regenerative economies in the Mediterranean and Africa. So this webinar is organized by EMEA, also under the Mediterranean Alliance in the framework of the COP30 in Brazil, Belém, together with the Brain Capital Alliance, the Brain Economy Hub, and also under the framework of the World Economic Forum, Brain Economy Action Forum. So the Mediterranean and African regions are on a frontier of climate change, as we know it, biodiversity loss and deep socio-economic transformations. These regions are already experiencing rising temperatures, water stress, ecosystem degradation, and growing inequalities. And then, according to the IPCC report, the Mediterranean is a hotspot. Yet, if we look at these regions, there is a large amount of youth dividend. And of course, this comes with immense human creativity, dynamisms, and cultural, indigenous, and scientific richness. And this is still untapped. So to navigate this important moment here at the COP30, we need to bring what we been working together with all of you here invited today, the two forms of capital that are often treated separately. And what we are trying to offer here is to connect them for a framework that is regenerative for human flourishing and well-being. So these are the nature capital, natural capital, which are the ecosystems, the biodiversity and resources that sustain the life and economic activities, and the brain capital, which is the physical, cognitive, emotional, and social resources of people and communities, which is overall our brain health, mental well-being, all also embedded in education, creativity, and capacity to cooperate and innovate to enhance the productivity for our system. So our hypothesis today is quite clear. There is no resilient, regenerative economy without healthy brains and healthy ecosystem. Of course, the regenerative principles come from biology. And in fact, thriving natural environments support mental health and social stability. But also, if we look at brain capital, our mental health overall, the knowledge, skills, and imagination, they are all indispensable for restoring ecological balance and also designing new models for prosperity. So they come hand in hand, which I call it the human versus the planet symbiosis, which they need to reinforce each other to create what I call a higher effect for our economy. So the purpose and objective of today's conversation is to explore how brain capital and natural capital can be jointly leveraged to accelerate the regenerative transitions in the Mediterranean and Africa. So we want to connect insights from different disciplines, neuroscience, with of course my colleague Harris Ayer, who is with us, and also Alfred, he's also with us today. Also mental health, environmental economics, health economics, and sustainable finance and public policy to rethink how we measure and how we invest and how to upscale, in fact, the regenerative principles anchored in brain capital and natural capital for human and planetary well-being. So today what we would like to concretely do is to first define a bit more and contextualize this interdependence between the natural capital and the brain capital in our region, means the Mediterranean and Africa, but also to go beyond the SDGs. We know that 2030 is almost coming. It's only 4 years from now. So we need to have a new vision, a new paradigm to anchor really the post-SDGs. And this is something that eventually we can contribute. Second is to identify policy and investment mechanisms that support regenerative economic models powered, in fact, by brain capital and natural capital. Also to explore how brain health, education, creativity can drive behavioral and systemic shifts towards sustainability and flourishing. And also highlight some emerging initiatives in finance, innovation, and governance that integrate ecological resilience with cognitive and social resilience. So in fact, what we try to achieve in this conversation is not only to generate new ideas, because we've been generating new ideas already within this new thinking, but also we would like to start inspiring new, concrete collaborations and actions and eventually policy recommendations for the COP30 that can feed into our climate, biodiversity, and development strategies for our regions, but also could inspire other regions, like, for example, the Amazon regions where the COP is happening this week. I'm very honored to have with us today a great panelist of speakers, each one of them will bring a unique lens on the brain-nature nexus. So I will present all of them, and then we can move into the discussion. So we have Dr. Harris Iyer. He's the Executive Director of the Brain Capital Alliance, who has been really promoting and developing, and I would say building the Brain Capital movement under his leadership. But also he has been advisor of the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association since the beginning of the work that we've been doing together on brain economy. And he will talk to us about how brain economy transition could be a lever for a post-SDG era and beyond. And also we have together with us Dr. Angela Essi Apegwe, Mika. She's assistant professor at the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington. And she will talk to us about the analytics behind this movement of brain economy for the G20. We have Dr. Nathalie Helmi, who is the head of environmental economics at the Centre Scientifique of Monaco. And she's also member of our advisory board of the Euro-Mediterranean Economists Association. And she will discuss the main recommendations of the high-level working group on the same topic, which happened in Monaco less than a month ago. And then we have Professor Alfred Njamanchi, who is a professor of neurology and neuroscience and founder, CEO of the Brain Research Africa initiative called BRAIN, who will share with us the perspectives on advancing the brain economy in Africa. And finally, Mr. Dennis Pamlin, who is working on the Flourishing Lives for All, who will be also speaking on positioning human flourishing within brain and natural capital pathways. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Harris, and I would like to remind you, please, that this session is 1 hour. So yes, please keep your intervention concise, and then we can have a bit of discussion at the end. Harris, great to see you with us, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Rim. Thanks for having me, and good to see all my co-panelists. Let me pull up my slides and provide the audience with some context. Today, I want to follow on from Rim to talk about the brain economy in the post-SDG era. That, of course, means beyond 2030. I want to propose to you that the brain economy, we could have a brain economy decade from 2030 to 2040. The sunsetting of the SDGs also aligns to the sunsetting of a couple of major WHO mental health and neurology declarations. And so there is a window of opportunity in the next decade to position the brain economy. And so we need to therefore get busy with articulating what this means. And of course, we want this to mean brain in society. And of course, what better example of society issues than climate change? The brain economy was noted this year by a journalist who was reviewing our World Economic Forum Brain Economy Action Forum as the new thing. And so I provide this as context for folks that are new to the brain economy. The journalist said, which I think is fair, the brain economy is the idea, or it's really a strategy, that communities, societies, and countries contribute to economic growth and stability through their collective brain power. And the proposal was that this is a new thing, and that in the coming months, governments and companies are likely to hear a lot more about it. And I think that that's very fair. We have just in the last week been engaged in the ASEAN region. We're now obviously talking about the Brazilian context and the Euro-Mediterranean context. And we have had lots of activities in the last week in Houston, Texas, for example. So the brain economy is about shifting us from a brain negative position of society where we have too much burden from mental neurological challenges and too many challenges with literacy, numeracy, and brain skills. How do we move to a brain positive future? That's what it's about. And to break it down a little bit further for folks, there are 5 levers according to the WEF and McKinsey Health Institute Action Forum. And on the first one is brain health related innovations in healthcare and public health. Brain skill innovations, number 2 in K-12 and beyond. Research is important in the context of the third pillar, measurement, modeling, interventions. Investing, very much important for thinking through how to modify global financial architecture for brain positive investments and reducing or sunsetting brain negative investments, which we can unpack. And then, of course, mobilizing is the 5th lever, which is all about coordination. How do you coordinate this across different disciplines or in a geography, for example? And so we do have examples of this happening already on the coordination side. And I would encourage you to look on the right-hand side. You can Google and find more about our Brain Economy Action Forum at WEF. We have a great number of Pathfinder organizations, including EMEA. And important to know that a large brain economy report will be coming out at the WEF Congress Center in January. It's called the Brain Economy Impact Report. So if you're interested to follow us in the coordination of this, please check that website out and follow. Let's talk about the brain economy research strategy. This is a big pillar for us. Obviously, the brain economy needs to be grounded in science. And so we are articulating a research strategy and have a paper in preparation. It has 3 different components: measurement, which is critical, and that gets us into measuring brain health and brain skills, but the exposome is very important. So in environmental exposures, toxins, or clean environment exposures as well. Modeling, very important there. Secondarily, how do we model what the brain is doing over the lifespan, what the brain is doing in different contexts? And perhaps Angela will talk more about that. In fact, I know she will. She's got some wonderful analytics to share. And then interventions as well. What sort of interventions can we drive in this neuroscience renaissance that we're living through, where our understanding of the human brain, thanks to artificial intelligence and miniaturized technologies and biomarkers, is better than ever. And so this is the sort of the high-level scaffold of our research strategy that we will be talking much more about also in Davos. And I would say that we do have quite a lot of nice emerging science linking nature and the brain. It's nice science, but it's concerning science. On the left-hand side, recently one of our colleagues was articulated the effects of air pollutants on brain health in the State of the Global Air Report. And it's no surprise, bad air, or particulate matter laden air, is bad for the brain across the entire lifespan, from changing the brain structure of a fetus through to accelerating Alzheimer's disease. In the middle panel, you see a wonderful paper from Agustin Ibanez linking up the exposome to the brain. This was a paper published in Neuron a couple of years ago, and is a very good framing. And it's important to recognize, though, that the brain is not just subject to exposome and that's it. Our brains are the seat of our skills and our energy and our motivation, and then the seat of green skills and ecological intelligence. And those are the skills needed for folks to develop new green technologies or flourishing technologies, as Dennis would say. And so our brains are important. Therefore, this idea of social emotional learning, K-12 education, and beyond is so critical to the brain economy movement. And then on the right-hand side is another example of a big mega study from colleague Agustin Ibanez from the Latin American Brain Health Institute, which folks can read at their own leisure. So there are a lot of similarities between the brain positive and nature positive movements. It's all about strategic simplification for pragmatic change. That's what will come out today if you think about it upon reflection. We're about aiming at bridging science to public and private power structures. This is a defense against reductionism because we live in a complex world with lots of interdependencies. But we do need to measure this work. We need to measure brain capital, measure nature capital, and that's not easy. And so we need to be humble and iterative. But it is obviously an opportunity for novel research, investing in policy, and you'll see examples of that today from the other speakers. I encourage you to look at a recent paper that we developed for the T20, Rimayati and I, where we looked at the connections between brain and natural capital. And the pull quote was that treating these two forms of capital in isolation ignores the reality that healthy brains need healthy environments and vice versa. And I think that Alfred perhaps will talk more about the G20 Africa summit that was done recently on the brain, and Angela as well. And so that was great that we could be engaged and influence that forum. We are interested in infusing natural capital into our existing platform. So we have a place-based brain economy initiative in Houston, Texas. So what could we do to incorporate brain and natural capital linkages into that? Also in the context of the G7 in Canada, which we just hosted, we're now talking about G7 France presidency next year. So how can we involve more climate and nature stakeholders in that? We're very open and receptive. And then furthermore, not just in the place-based context, but in specific sectors, we're interested in infusing more natural capital thinking and innovation in those sectors, including the built environment, which makes a lot of sense. And then we have other multilateral and regional specific examples. So as you can tell, we are preparing to develop a brain decade declaration, 2030 to 2040, involving public, private, philanthropic stakeholders. We're working with scientific journals, corporations, governments. And so how do we make sure that we incorporate this brain nature, brain climate linkage in that declaration that we develop and as we go to try to influence global governance structures? So that's the brain economy and some of our early thinking. And I hope that's a useful framing for the rest of the speakers to tee off of. Thank you, Rim.
Thank you, Harris. This is super exciting, and what I also like so much in this movement, it's equity. I mean, everybody is involved, no one is left behind, and at the same time, there is this collaborative spirit and really partnership spirit, which is driving all of us to work. And I must say that we are all working on a voluntary basis, led under you with this neuroscience thinking and bringing really research in neuroscience into economics, into policy. And this is very exciting because we can see the level of transformation that one can do in an endogenous way. And this is really interesting. And I think there is a lot of research that can be done. Just I want to say a few words about our brain capital dashboard. It is freely accessible. We have more than 26,000 observations that have been really collected over the years between experts. And this is also allowing us to make a step forward into measurement. You said it's a complex of course, it's a complex problem. But then our societies are not simple. I mean, they are very complex, and we need a measurement that is also reflecting the complexity of our societies. And this is what we're trying all to do together, from neuroscientists, economists, other disciplines, environmentalists. And this is how we really connect the dots, and this is what we're trying to do. So the dashboard will offers this already. And we are trying with other economists, also with the collaboration of Angela, to work on the index. Hopefully we can get something not revolutionary, but then, as you said, Harris, we have to be humble, we have to be iterative, and try slowly to improve our metrics. So without further ado, Angela, to you on the modeling and analytics, please.
Thank you, Rima. Thank you for inviting me to join this very important conversation. It's an honor to be part of this discussion this morning. 1 second, let me make sure you can see my slide. Are we good? Yes.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to speak a bit more on data and measurement of brain health. And I'll start by framing the presentation with just a broad outline of what to think about when we're trying to quantify brain health. And with the perspective of an economist. So we start thinking through the health loss, that's the biological aspect of it, all right? And then we can see the loss that can accumulate from the economic perspective as well. And then we have a third category that's intangible. So, I mean, the pain related to losing someone because maybe they losing the presence or the awareness of someone because they have dementia or some other brain health related ailment. I mean, there's aspects of it that you can quantify in the first two buckets, the health part and the economic part. But also there's a part, I think, that's intangible. And I would argue that that's part of the reason why this brain economy and nature nexus is very interesting and important, because there are certain intangible components of being human that is able to be captured in that broader framework. So with those three big buckets, under the economic loss, we can think more concretely about direct spending sources of loss, as well as indirect spending of loss. At IHME, we focused heavily on quantifying the loss related to the health loss related to various diseases, injuries, and risk factors. The Global Burden of Disease study, which is a big study that's existed for several years now, captures the health burden of a host of diseases, over 360 plus and counting now. It includes various summary measures, years lived with disability, trying to capture that, a little more of that intangible part related to health burden, years of life lost, disability, adjusted life years. The estimates produced in the Global Burden of Disease will cover 20 age groups, both male and female, and over 204 countries. Of more immediate relevance is a recent study we have ongoing that's looking at brain health measurement and the comprehensive measurement of the loss associated with brain health disorders. So it captures the brain, the health-related burden as well as the economic burden. It includes over 20 brain health disorders. That's what's listed to your left. It includes neurological disorders, mental, cognitive, developmental and congenital disorders, as well as cerebrovascular diseases, cancer, and some infectious disease conditions. Specific metrics that we are capturing there include the mortality burden, the prevalence, disability life years, adjusted life years, as well as the years lived with disability. Of more immediate relevance is also the economic losses that we capture here. That's loss related to productivity loss and income, and then direct spending. And we also extended it to capture the caregiver loss. So a lot of neurological disorders, as well as the other brain health disorders, require some extra caregiving in various stages. And so trying to quantify that burden on society is helpful as well. Now I'll give some data to help frame the discussion as well. Where do we see brain health disorders now? So the bars capture the three different buckets of brain health disorders that I mentioned that we're capturing, looking at all of them across the different geographic regions. So now, I mean, we'll focus on the Sub-Saharan Africa bloc and the North African Middle East bloc, which is where our particular audience is of interest, right? We see that the dark blue bars will be the mental health and neurological disorders. We see brain health disorders. We see that for now, a lot of it is not necessarily in North Africa and Middle East or Sub-Saharan Africa, but in general, for every one burden in high income countries, 4 of that is in the low and middle income countries, right? We can see the burden in Southeast Asia and East Asia. So it's a growing burden. In terms of mental health delis across the age spectrum, these two figures are telling us the distribution of that disease burden across the age spectrum. When we can see for mental health disorders, it's peaking in the youth and middle age range. However, it's at a generally similar level across the entire age spectrum, from both childhood to adulthood. For neurological disorders, we see that a lot of it tends to peak towards the older ages. Now we look forward a little bit. My fellow panelist, Professor Njemishi, will speak more to the situation as it relates to Africa. But we see now in 2025, this is the age pyramid highlighting the population age structure in Africa. We have only 1.3 billion people in Africa in 2025. It's still quite a useful population. Let's fast forward to 2100. And we see that the population is going to change significantly structural-wise, with a much larger number of older persons as well. And so that presents itself with its own unique challenges that needs to be planned for and addressed. What about the economic burden? We're looking at two aspects, direct spending, how much economies are spending towards treating health, brain health related disorders, as well as the indirect part, how much are the people who are living with the diseases losing in terms of income and from the caregiver perspective. The results or the project is looking at making estimates that are comprehensive, comparable, internally consistent, and transparent. So just two slides with maps to highlight what we're looking at in terms of the economic burden. I will focus more on the Euro-Mediterranean area, a region here. And if we look at it, we see that a lot of the countries in that area will have or are spending between 10 and 17% of their health spending on disorders that are related to brain health. And so this is quite significant in terms of the opportunity that it presents for making improvements or gaining some economic growth there related to lost income for the patient. That is a little also severe here. If you look again at the Euro-Mediterranean area, we're looking at between 1 to 2% loss of the GDP only for people that are living with these diseases. Lastly, I would highlight some work that the Brain Health Task Force the Africa Brain Health Task Force did as an illustrative way to capture the challenge that or the opportunity that we have at stake, right? And here we looked at how much brain health disorders are costing Africa, as well as potential interventions across the lifespan, thinking here from a life course perspective on what could potentially be gained from action. And so looking at interventions such as education, kangaroo mother care, a hypothetical Alzheimer's vaccine, and some of that illustrative work shows that about 36 trillion billion could be gained from that. Why does this all matter? I have said a lot in terms of the areas that will be impacted, as well as the economic cost at this point. 4 key reasons. It's important that we have the data and the measurement for these areas, because it will help us keep everyone accountable. The data will show us where the gap exists. It will help us with resource allocation appropriately. It will help us advocate to see where the additional funds may need to be targeted. It will help us improve how we track our progress over time. And of course, what has already come up a few times already, policy making, help us influence the relevant design and expansion of mental health and brain health services. With that, I will end my submission. If that's of any of the data that I showed is of more interest, the Brain Health Atlas, as well as IHME, has a ton of information that can be leveraged. Over to you, Rim. Thank you. And of course, happy to expand or clarify on any aspects that will be of interest.
Thank you, Angela. And I must say, this is already giving us a very clear view about mental disorders globally, in fact, because the data that you have is a global data, and it gives really a great view on where we're standing, not only in developed countries, but also in developing countries and emerging countries. But what I find extremely important is we need to coordinate all the sources of data and try really to have a common understanding. And see, this is so important between you guys, IHME, and also the WHO and other data sources. And what we have tried to do within the dashboard is to have a consensus within this sort of data. Of course, the definition of brain health or brain capital, we took brain health, which is the absence of disorders. And this is so important for us, because then, of course, we can increase it a little bit more, and of course, under the control of Harris there. But then we said, okay, brain health or mental health, but then we don't have much data on mental aspects. And I don't want to dwell into the fact that in many countries we lack data. We lack a lot of data, and this is also what makes our work as economists a little bit more complex. So we try really to impute some sort of data and all of this, but it's not great to do it like that. So I really urge everybody to collect data on this from the health side, to allow us to build as many indicators that are really reflecting the reality, and then we could make all the assessment possible for policy action and implementations going forward. So I would like to go straight to Alfred because I don't want to, I think there is a link and I see it clear from your side, Alfred, and as you are the chair of the Brains Initiative in Africa, how does it, all of this sound to you, and what are the actions that one needs to put together? And then, of course, we will move later to Nathalie and to Dennis to give us more the connections with nature capital. Please.
Thank you very much, Reem, and dear colleagues and friends. It's great to be together again. And I really appreciate that Harris and Angela have done a great job. So I'll take even a little fewer minutes just to share some kind of thoughts, some philosophical thoughts from the African perspective. I was asked to talk about the advancing the brain economy in Africa, and I want to share some thoughts on one brain, one health, one earth for our common future. Yes, we know that from the womb to the tomb, we all have only one brain, and that's why it's so important, and we need to take care of our brains. Unfortunately, we see that the brain is under attack from disease, degeneration, trauma, drugs, and environment, and many things are happening, as Harris has shown us in some scientific work already. I usually say that if the brain does not work, the rest does not matter. Some journalists try to qualify the rest, but I mean, everything else does not matter if the brain does not work. My students know that. And it's important that we let African children to understand this. In fact, there was a primary school book that said, what is the use of the head? And it was written, the head is used to carry things. And my grandson told the teacher, no, the head is not used to carry things. The head has the brain, which is used to make things that will carry things for us. That's my grandson challenged a primary school teacher, and the teacher was confused. So there's a lot of work to do, even in education. So that since we have only one brain and one environment, one earth, we need to take care of our environment to have healthy people, healthy animals, a healthy environment for the economy. I got this from Harris. He's already mentioned that, so I don't need to make any comment that our planet is heating up, our bodies are heating up, there is inflammation everywhere, economies are heating up. So there's inflammation, and we need to find some firefighters to put out the fire so that we can have some normalcy. So this is a statement that came to me while Harris and I were in Montevideo, that there can be no sustainable development, wealth creation, and reduction of disparities on Earth without health, as there is no health without brain health. Just to emphasize again the importance of brain health, it is not that important to some people. Some don't even realize it. What is Africa's role in the brain economy? A few philosophical statements, again, just to share with you as we have this conversation. Africa is not poor, even though paradoxically, Africans for now are poor. We hope that in the future, Africans will become rich and to be able to help the rest of the world. Africa is not small. I'm not giving you any statistics. We know the statistics. Africa's rich land and water masses contribute a lot to the global economy, but usually neglected. The fourth point, philosophically, is that Africa is not homogeneous. Africa's rich diversity in terms of people, in terms of brains, in terms of human capital, in terms of its land and seas and air riches, Africa is very diversely rich. But again, talking about economics, it pains me, Reem, that Africans are poor. Africa is not dying. In fact, Africa is very young, even though it's an old continent, and Africa is growing in population. And I know that Angela can share with us statistics on that. She has all of those statistics. So I submit to our discussion that Africa holds the key to our common future. How did we capture that? I remember Harris and I and Angelina and Reem and many others got together in Yaoundé during World Brain Day to have the first African high-level summit on the brain economy, brain health, and brain capital that led to the publication of the Yaoundé Declaration, having about 32 ministers still sitting in government today participate in that, and over 200 colleagues from around the world from different organizations on health to put the blueprint on how we can leapfrog in Africa to create jobs, to use AI, to use the developments that are happening, the technologies that are coming on for Africa to catch up and industrialize itself in a way that is brain positive. These are pictures of that event that we remember. We all published this together, most of us who are on this conversation. This has gone around, has participated in the World Economic Forum last January, and the UN, the 2 General Assembly sessions, and the G7 in Canada. We just participated, we ring together at the G20 and having those conversations. And next week, I'll be going back again to the ministers' meeting to continue to share this message that African economies need to sit up and align with this brain economy movement. How do we unlock Africa for the global brain economy? I think that there are several things that have to be done, and some of the things have to be done by Africa, and some of the things have to be done by the rest of the world. I think that I submit that it is very, very important for African countries to transform Africa's educational systems. Our current educational systems are not oriented towards production. They are oriented towards just getting head knowledge, having a big certificate, and using that certificate to look for a job. We need to transform that with the concept of brain capital, with innovation, with creativity, with creating jobs and training more people into professions rather than training people in general education and people have long certificates but cannot produce anything. We need to transform African health systems. I couldn't put the slide on, but there's a paper written by the Director General of Africa CDC that talks about Africa gaining its sovereignty by producing the things that it needs for its health systems by itself. And I think if African governments begin to think about that, we'll be making progress in this direction. The third thing is that we need to transform African economic systems so that they can align with the brain economy. But Africa itself cannot do this because we know that the global economic systems are not equitable, so we need more equity. The global economic systems produce lots and lots of disparities, and this has to be handled at the global level. You know more about this, you are more experts in this area than I am, but I think that while Africa has a role to play and responsibilities, there is also the global economic community that has to work on equity and disparity issues for Africa to be able to stand up and not just be a producer of raw materials, but also an industrialized region of the world, and that will bring stability to the rest of the economies of the world. I will end by sharing a few thoughts with you. Our beautiful and wonderful brains and bodies, as well as the resourceful Earth and the entire universe, are tremendous gifts to humanity. However, our brains and bodies, our Earth and universe have all been set on fire, the fire of inflammation and global warming. And if nothing is done now, we all risk a more rapid and drastic extinction that could ever be imagined. But the good news is, as we each have only one brain in our whole lifetime, and we all have only one Earth in the whole universe, we all therefore must together invest in brain health and in building brain capital, given that there can be no sustainable development, well-being, and wealth for all without health, as there is no health, even one health, without brain health. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. And this is a great connection to the next speaker. But you made me think, because in reality, regeneration begins when we recognize that healing our planet and our minds or our brains okay, depends where we are putting the
Yeah.
line, are inseparable. So
Exactly.
in fact, a truly regenerative economy, if we want to really work together on a regenerative economy, it's an economy, in fact, that invests not only in restoring ecosystems. Of course, this has been already, started since many years, and this is also happening, but also in strengthening our cognitive, emotional, and social resilience of us as humans. And only by cultivating both the nature capital and the brain capital, we can create societies that can thrive and also can flourish. And I think this is, again, the power of regeneration also means that we need to recognize, but also to regenerate based on research and development and innovation. And this is why the regenerative principles are they're not coming from, they are not new. They are anchored in biology. So when we sleep, we regenerate our brain cells. And correct me if I'm wrong. So, and this is also important to continue doing it at all levels, not our brain, and also on the planet side. We can regenerate, not to simply extract, to regenerate. And this is so important to think on regenerative, with the regenerative philosophy. Let me go straight to Natalie, because of course, Natalie, she is an environmental economist, and she has been working a lot on restoring ecosystem of the planet. She has made many contributions, and she can talk a little bit of her work. And then she can share with us the main recommendation of the workshop that we have organized with her in Monaco, on bridging the natural capital and brain capital for a sustainable future. To you, Nathalie, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Reem. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm happy to share now with you the main messages that we had at the workshop that we co-organized in Monaco in November, the 3rd of November. So maybe next slide, please. Thank you. It has been a unique and exciting dialogue between the natural capital and brain capital communities. Society today faces two intertwined and escalating crises. First, the loss of natural capital through climate change, pollution, and environmental degradation. And second, the loss of brain capital through mental and neurological disorders, poor education outcomes, and toxic environmental exposures. These two fields have evolved largely in parallel, yet they share striking similarities. Both seek to quantify complex systems, raise awareness, and drive transformation across sectors with clear indicators and targets. The workshop created for the first time a high-level dialogue between these two worlds, exploring how protecting ecosystems and nurturing human minds can reinforce one another. Next slide, please. Our workshop, Natural Capital and Brain Economy, examined how human knowledge, creativity, and innovation can accelerate the protection and regeneration of natural systems. Natural capital sustains our health and cognitive performance, while the brain economy provides the tools to build sustainable and resilient societies. Next slide, please. The aim is to link natural capital and the brain economy to sustainable finance by identifying value-creating opportunities, showcasing innovative financial models, co-developing regenerative investment strategies, and building cross-sector networks. Next slide, please. In this workshop, we had 3 working groups. The first one was about financing regeneration, where nature meets innovation. Next slide, please. The focus of this first working group was to identify financial tools and investment models that enable brain economy innovation to regenerate and protect natural capital. Next slide, please. I'm just presenting the key messages, and I think it will be food for thought. Biodiversity credits and ecosystem offsets are expanding beyond the carbon markets. But like other regenerative investments, they need clear economic and impact evidence to attract capital. With environmental degradation driving rising public and health costs, prevention offers strong financial value, yet short political horizons and underpriced climate risk hinder long-term actions. Aligning finance with brain, natural and cultural capital is key to capturing full ecological and societal returns. Next slide, please. And now here we will go to the second working group. It was about intelligence for ecosystems, data, AI, knowledge for natural capital. Next slide, please. The focus of this second working group was to investigate how data science, AI, indigenous knowledge, and digital tools can improve how we value, manage, and restore natural capital. Next slide, please. Brain economy infrastructure can boost biodiversity and climate goals by merging research networks with local knowledge, enabling adaptive restoration, monitoring, and innovation. Capacity building aligns government and community priorities, while education develops brain capital that drives innovation and well-being. By recognizing the economic value of brain capital alongside natural capital, human ingenuity becomes a strategic asset for ecological outcomes. And next slide, please. And finally, the third working group was about policy and purpose, aligning institutions for a regenerative economy. The purpose of of this working group was to design policy frameworks and institutional strategies that support the alignment of finance, innovation, and ecosystem protections. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, one more. Thank you. Equitable governance gives all groups a voice. So equal procedures don't always yield equal outcomes. Inclusive governments listen to those often ignored, indigenous people, women, and marginalized communities. By shifting from extractive to regenerative priorities, institutions let everyone contribute to sustainable, just management of nature. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nathalie, for reporting on the recommendations of the workshop. And I think this is all aligned with the interconnection between restoring the ecosystems and also developing the infrastructure for brain capital and brain economy, as was explained by Harris, Angela, and Alfred. And I think this also gives us the path toward more research, toward more collaborations between different networks, mainly the networks of brain capital that we are developing together with all the stakeholders engaged, for example, within the World Economic Forum discussions, but also the networks on the nature economy and ecosystem. And I think this is also something that they need to work together, not in silos. And with this, I would like to introduce Dennis. Dennis, we had the chance to meet before on your framework of flourishing, of human flourishing. So how do you see all of this within the work that you're doing currently, and what can you, I would say, recommend toward this thinking and this transformation, in fact, that is happening, and I hope it will happen even faster before 2030. To you.
Thank you very much, Rim. Let me see if I can share my screen. Do you see my screen? Do you see my screen now?
It's coming, not yet.
Coming.
It's a bit slow.
Now, yes.
It's
okay. So, delivery on human and nature's needs in the 21st and 22nd century. I like the long-term perspective we had here. And I really like the framing about how do we bridge the brain, the mental, and nature. These are two converging trends. But I would actually maybe have a bit of a sober outlook and also warning. This reminds me very much when I, 25 years ago or so, wrote the report about the role of internet, something that was very new 25 years ago. And I think we have a lot to learn. There was a lot of people working with the internet early days were very optimistic, saw very many opportunities. Today, I think we have a little bit of another outlook on how internet has affected society. Some good things, but also very, very many bad things. And if I would to be really honest, I'm really not very happy with what I'm seeing on World Economic Forum. What Harris was quoting, that the brain economy is about contributing to economic growth and stability. I would say that's a warning sign. No, the brain economy can guide the economy in the right direction. The brain economy is not to help the current economy grow, because we're growing in the wrong direction. And this is something where I see the current brain economy now being captured in very negative ways. We see better marketing and product development by the most addictive content, mental pollution by fast food, fast fashion, and fast media, using brain science to make their products even more addictive. And I think we need brain scientists to speak up about this as a problem, not just talk about the traditional brain challenge with Alzheimer's, etc., but that we have youth being mentally polluted right now. And those who are using the latest brain science are having huge resources and using that. But we also see lots of consultants coming in and saying, yeah, brain capital and brain economy, that's very nice. And they help oil companies, they help any company. And you're saying, oh, be more creative, be more brain fluent. But these are people who are destroying the planet. So do we want to help them to become more creative, to help their field board? We even see people now using brain architecture. And where is that being applied? At airports, to make people feel better about flying. So we have lots of capture of this brain science being used for the exactly reverse of what we're talking about. But we also see some really exciting science, and Harris has been at the forefront of this also with city planning, starting to ask about what is flourishing lives, but also some companies asking. But I really want to urge and really highlight that the main benefit for me, what I see with the brain science and brain economy, is not about helping the current economy become better, but transforming into a new economy. That's where I think the post SDG agenda is so important, because we don't want the brain economy to help current climate tools to become better or to become current innovation tools. We need a new set of tools that focus on flourishing lives. We don't need the brain flourishing to be a little bit better hamburgers or fast food and other sort of mentally polluting aspects. So we really need to think about how do we frame this, because brain economy and brain capital can be both a tool and a goal. And I think we need to separate when we use the brain capital and brain science to help formulate new, better goals. So we really understand what is a flourishing life. Because as people here have highlighted, if we don't have flourishing brains, what do we have? But for many people, that is not true. A flourishing brain is not a consuming brain. We want not a flourishing brain. We want young people to be desperate. That is why we have such a young health problem today, because so many people in our society want to pollute the brain and make young people depending on buying more things and feeling insecure, etc. So we really need to have, I think, a stronger voice from the brain community and saying, hang on, don't use our tools to make things even worse. So don't just talk about brain capital in any vague sense. We need to have a stronger vision of what should that actually lead to. Because I would like to really ask this research community to say, how does the innovation ecosystem look like? Not just look at single measures, but how do we bring new ideas into society? Where is the future born? And how can we bring brain science into the innovation ecosystem? Because fundamentally, this is where the future is born. This is where new things are happening. So we need to ask, how do we get brain science into incubators, into finance, in a more deeper sense, and really saying, how are these things contributing to flourishing life years? And that's where I think the brain science is so important. So we can't just keep it separated and make it an efficiency tool. It needs also to help shape the goals. So that's really what I see is for the post-SDG agenda, is really that the brain science should be at the heart. Because where do we want to go with society? That is flourishing brains. But then we need to discuss, what is that? How do we get flourishing brains? And what are the threats today? But what are the positive things? Reconnecting with nature, being with family, having a balance between the different hormones in our society and in our brains and in our marketing. There are so many tools that can be developed, but also what we want to avoid. Stressful circumstances where people panic and don't react in a rational way. So it's also about guiding society so we don't have what we see today in politics, very emotional driven access or sort of responses, and say this is a deeper challenge also on how we shape policy making. So we need to make sure that our policymakers have a healthy brain capacity, because if they don't have that, they're going to appeal to emotion, not logic and reason and science. And that is where I think maybe brain science also could have a huge contribution to discuss with policymakers and how we can have a policy agenda that is framed around brain health, both directly among those who are discussing, but also how they are communicating to their solution. And as Rim was saying, and Harris also, we have seen huge interest in this. And we see many cities now, especially on the city level, not so much on the national level, but also companies now coming in and want to explore. How can they help people flourish? They not just reduce emissions, but really make the world a better place. And I think that is such a powerful message from the brain economy network, that is a unique tool that almost no one else has, that really can answer this question, what is a flourishing life? So with that, I'd like to end.
Thank you, Dennis, for giving us this, I would say challenging the overall direction. Obviously, what we are trying to do at our level is to have a balanced evolution and trying to have a transformative approach, not to, I would say, contribute to the capture. And we don't want to contribute to the capture. And thank you for raising this. But I can assure you that we are all aligned with the thinking that we need to have a change of paradigm, which is toward flourishing, toward well-being, toward a symbiosis between what I say human and planet, but at the same time within the regenerative principles. And these regenerative principles, I can tell you, can be also embedding some growth thinking, but not the growth that we used to do before. It's a growth that is regenerative, that is inclusive, that is sustainable, not excessive, not extractive, and not only serving a few. You see, we need to have this a view that comes bottom up, but then at the same time, be enlarged to further populations that are completely not within all this debate. So we just cannot redo the mistake again that has happened after the Second World War. And I think this is important that we keep it in. If we look at the level of inequality in the globe, it's huge. And I don't know how to solve it. I mean, even there are no models that can solve this. So, and with this, I would like to listen before Angela would leave, her views about what Dennis said, and then Alfred, and then Natalie, and then I might have to close this webinar because my colleagues are telling me that I'm already 4 minutes above time. So I start with Angela.
Thank you, Reem, and thanks everyone. It's been an excellent webinar. I very much appreciate what he shared and Dennis shared, and the concerns there, and the importance for us to be sure to seize the moment and make sure we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. I think there's general excitement, but there's not an intentionality about it. And my sense is that's what he's pointing us to. We need to make sure as researchers, as people advocating for change and the use and the move towards a brain positive economy, I think we need to be mindful of the outcomes that we want and be intentional about aligning our actions towards getting us those outcomes instead of just, it's new, as Harris pointed out earlier, it's the new thing. And so I appreciate his signaling the importance of pausing and being intentional about the outcomes that we will want to see at the end of this. With the mindset that we're already over time, I'll pause there.
Thank you, Angela. That's very clear. We need to be intentional on the outcomes. Alfred?
I couldn't agree any better with what Dennis has submitted. And I think that's what we are working on. I just wonder, talking about consumption and production, Africa may be the highest consumer of firearms, but Africa produces none. And that may be an explanation to why our economies are so horrible. So I think that the opportunity is there. In this new decade of the brain, we have 4 more years, as Reem was saying. It is for us to work together so that at the end of as we go to the end of 2030, we would come up with a framework that is transformative and not just incremental. And I think that's what we are working to. We have 3 more years to get this work done, so that we have a better perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. Dennis, we have a lot of responsibility to continue working together on this. Natalie?
Yes, thank you for this wonderful webinar. I was very interested by all your presentations. As you said, Reem, we should change the paradigm. The economy should not be just extractive, it should be really regenerative. And when we talk about sustainable economy, it's not enough, because we are not going to give to the next generation the degraded planet that we already have. So this is why we have to regenerate it and then to pass it on to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And this really concludes our webinar today. We need to, I would say, regenerate our planet, our minds, to provide the next generations with something positive brain economy and positive nature economy. So thank you very, very much for this great conversation. We will continue working together, and I hope this will provide us also some potential for providing recommendations to this COP30. All eyes are there, and hopefully we can see some actions on that side. Thank you very much, and I see you all soon.